Shavuot, good morning, Kal Kadosh. We're going to continue with Kuf Mem Tet 149a1. However, though, we're just going to start from the Mishnah. Again, Kuf Mem Chet Amud Bet, just to get back into it. The Mishnah, Kuf Mem Chet Amud Bet, Monei Adam et Orchav et Perotav mipiv v'lo min haktav. You're allowed to count the amount of guests that you have in order to know how much bread that you need or how much food that you need. And also the Perotav. Perotav is the different types of foods that you have, only by your mouth, but not from the written. Meaning that I cannot come and take a piece of paper and start reading out how many guests or how many things, right? But I am allowed to do it from my mind, meaning from your mind, you're allowed to do it, an oral one, but not from written down. You're allowed to come and you're allowed to do a hagrala, which is like a lottery with your children on the table. You're not supposed to do a big piece, connect the small piece, and then give them out, distribute it according to the amounts. You're allowed to do it on Kochi and Yom Tov, but not on the manot, not on the different types of foods that are coming out. Okay? Says the Gemara, Kuf Mem Tet Amud Aleph. My Tama, what's the reasoning of the Isur to read a list which is written down? What's the Isur? What's the prohibition? That's what we're asking. Okay? So the Gemara says, My Tama, Rav Bebai Amar, Rav Bebai says, Yezera Shema Yimchok. Because maybe you're going to erase something, which means if you have a written list, and all of a sudden I start reading out names, the guests that we're going to have. It could be that by accident, since I'm reading out from it on Shabbat, I'm going to say, he canceled last minute. Take an eraser, boom, erase it. It's Shabbat. So because of that, you're not allowed to do it from a written list. Abai says, no. If you're going to permit reading a list, which has to do with how many guests you're going to have, maybe you're going to start reading other types of documents which have to do with buying and selling, right? Different, documents, whether it's of selling things or buying things. So therefore, because of that, prohibited. My benai, what's the nafkamina between the two different reasons why it would be prohibited? So answer the Gemara, the difference between them. The katava kotel midle. It says you wrote it on top of the wall, and somewhere where it's very tall, which you can't get there easily. So imagine right now I'm going to write it down on like a bulletin board, on a board, but it's very tall. It's very high. So I can't just get there that easily. So because of that, it's going to be, that's going to be the difference. The mandam, according to the mandam, maybe you're going to erase it. I'm not going to suspect it. But according to the mandam, maybe I'm going to start reading other types of documents, right? We are going to suspect it. Okay? According to the mandam, it says, 1 second, why doesn't each one hold with each other? And according to the mandam, maybe you're going to erase something from a written list. Why don't we suspect that you're going to come and you're going to start reading from documents you shouldn't be reading from? The two, and furthermore, the Shema Imchok lo chashinan, right? Are you going to tell me Shema Imchok lo chashinan? We don't suspect that you're going to erase something if it's going to be very tall. But now we learned in the Mishnah, lo yikra leoraner. You're not supposed to come and read to the light of a candle. The Amar Rabba says, even if the candle is on the second floor, basically, which means that you have tall ceilings, and it's like it's supposed to be on the second floor, it's still going to be prohibited. So the question that we ask ourselves is, so what's going on? Yeah? Even if it's going to be very tall. Even if it's going to be 10, one on top of another, you're not supposed to. But rather, the difference between them is, he says over here, the katava kotel umitate, which means you wrote it on the wall, but in a place very low. According to the mandam Hashem Chok, we're going to do it. According to the Hashem Ikra, we're not going to suspect. Why? Because we don't suspect you're going to switch the wall for documents. I mean, not because you're reading from the wall means I'm going to come and start taking, sale documents and start reading about different sales that I want to do. I'm saying you're not going to do it. You don't mix them up together. Mandamar, according to the mandamar, that maybe you're going to read by different documents. Lechush, why don't we suspect Shema Imchok? Maybe you're going to erase, right? So he says, now you're right. The chazi katav lava pinkas. What happened was you put it inside of a tavla or a pinkas, which means you marked it inside with a knife, like the imprint. So according to the mandamar Shema Imchok lo chashinim, we're going to suspect it, right? Because until you're going to bring something to erase it, it's not something that you could erase very easily. So therefore, what happens is that you're going to remember. According to the mandamar, maybe you're going to read that we do suspect that you're going to do it. And according to the Mandama Shemim Chok, why don't we suspect also you're going to read Shtarei Detot? If you're going to tell me Tavla Pinkas V'Shtarei Michol, you're not going to make a difference. You're not going to get mixed up between documents and between Tavla Pinkas, like a ledger, a booklet. He says, "Vatani we learned in a bright. Adam kama bifnim, kama b'chutz." You're allowed to start counting how many people are on the inside and how many people are on the outside, and how many amonot you have to actually put out. Mitoch ktav shel gabei hakotel, but not mitoch shel gabei tavla pinkas. That means you could do it from the wall, but you can't do it from on other things. So hechidami. So what's the case exactly? Ilema dekativ michtav. If it's going to be that you're writing it down. So maishnacha. What's the difference between the two of them? Elalav. But rather, what are we dealing with? The chayik. Right? What does that mean? The chayik. You actually came and you imprinted it. Uktani we learned miktav shel gabei hakotel, but lo miktav shel gabei. They're only on the wall. You could do it, not on anywhere else. So it says the Gemara ela leolam, but really be'emet katav hakotel midli. We're talking about that you wrote it very, very high up. When you're the question of Rabbah, why is it by the candle we did make a gezerah? So you're not allowed to read from a candle, even though it's all the way up there. And by the wall, you're allowed to, even if it was written on the wall, you could read it from the wall, even though it's up there. The Rabbah Tanai, it's a machloka Tanaim. Why? The time we learned in the right, he says it's permitted on the wall to read the guests and everything. What's the case? If you're going to tell me you wrote it down here below, so maybe you're going to erase it. Elalav, obviously, you wrote it very high up, so you can't get, by the time you're going to get a ladder or get something to do, go up there, you're going to remember Shabbat. So he comes to teach you that the Rabbah is Bemet tonight, Machlok tonight. Shmamina, that's what Bemet that we say. Okay? Vehani Tanai, Katanim tonight. Now, these Tanaim is like another group of Tanaim. The Tanaim was learned in a Braita. En ro'in b'mar'ah b'Shabbat. You're not allowed to look in a mar'ah, in a mirror on Shabbat. Rabbi Meir says you're allowed to. Mar'ah kavur b'kotav, it's going to be stuck to the wall. Ma'ishna kavur b'kotav. What's the difference? Why if it's now the mirror is stuck to the wall, it's permitted? So it says, by the time you're going to bring scissors or to do something, you're going to remember that it's Shabbat. So it says, Sheinu kavur. Same thing if it's just a mirror that's not on the wall. Right? Also, the achim that you're going to remember. So he says, no, hacha b'marasha matechet, we're talking about a marah which is made out of matechet. And like Rav Nachman and the name of Rabbi Avua. Dam Rav Nachman Avua, never amru marasha matechet. So why is it that you're not allowed to look in marah matechet on Shabbat? Neshadam asul lashir ba'animin midlulalim. Because imagine, if I had a metal type of a mirror, I could come, I look in the mirror, and then I do like this, and I take off a little bit of hair over here. And because I did that, it's going to be a sur. So because of that, I'm not allowed to look into a mirror of matechet on Shabbat. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in a Braita. Katava ma'alech tachat atzura v'tachat diokenot, asur likoto b'Shabbat. This is also very, very important. You're not allowed to read captions on Shabbat. Meaning, underneath a picture, many times you have a caption. And the caption is that it explains to you the picture. So you're not allowed to read the captions underneath, whether it's a tzura, an image, or the diokenot, which is, again, the pictures of human beings, on Shabbat. Why? Because maybe you're going to reach Shtarei Diotot. But the picture itself, even during the weekday, you're not allowed to look at it. Because it's like you're looking at a god. Obviously, we're talking about that, we're talking about, things like that it's like different gods. My Talmuda, what's the limuda? Do not turn to it midatchem. Okay? So basically, this is actually a very interesting halacha, right, which is actually brought down. Right, which means that do not try to make avodah zarah for yourselves. But the concept was that captions in itself is going to be a problem. Okay, here it says the Magen Avraham says the minhag is only to look at things which are mamash avodah zarah. But anything which is not avodah zarah, you're allowed to look at a picture, but not the caption. Okay, fine. Then the two dots. It says, Mefis Adam min banav. You're allowed to come and look, and you're allowed to make like a lottery with your children. So it says over here like this: In banav in beneveto in imachel lo. So it's only permitted with your family members, but not with other people. My time, what's the reasoning? Because Rav Yehuda Shmuel, like Rav Yehuda Shmuel, the Amar of Yehuda Shmuel, but it says of Yehuda and Shmuel, bnei chabura, people that are going together in a group, hamakpidim zazeh, they're makpidim on each other, yeah. Ovrim mishum midah, mishum mishkal, mishum inyan, mishum lovin uporim. They are going to be ovrim because of their akpada, on whether it's on Shabbat and Yom Tov, whether it's because of dvarim shebemidah, Mishkal, Minyan, or Lovinu Purim, which means that, for example, certain things which are some measures of weight, of numbers, right? Certain things you take by numbers, right? Eggs, you don't sell by weight, you sell by numbers. A dozen, half a dozen, 18, whatever it is, or said 30, all these things. You understand? Other things, it's by weight. Right? When you're buying flour, things like that, it goes by weight, how many pounds or how many kilos, okay? Other things, it's going to be measurement, right? How much measure? So you say, okay, this is 1 meter, 2 meters, or whatever, 1 feet, 2 feet, inches, according to what it is. Then there's things which means you're not allowed to lend and borrow things of food on Shabbat and Yom Tov for certain things. So it says Yom Tov. Now all these sunim is also going to be on Yom Tov. So Kuf Mem Tet Amud Bet says the Gemara, Divrei Hillel, just like the words of Hillel, Af Mishum Ribut. Sometimes it's going to be a problem also of Ribit. Because, for example, let's say I lend you a pound of flour, and then you give it back to me. So if the price went up in between, and now you're going to have to buy it and give it to me, that's Ribit. It's going to be a problem. So, one second, if we're talking about Ribit, so even with your family member, there's a problem with Ribit. I can't lend money to my son with Ribit, and he's going to pay me back with interest. So says the Gemara, no. The reason is like Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. The Amar of Yehuda Amar Rav, you are allowed to. Why? In order that they should understand what is the chumrah of Ribit. Which means when they're going to come and see that the money is in the possession, then they have to come and they have to pay it back, right? So then what's going to happen is they're going to say, you know what? It doesn't taste good. They say, I don't like Ribit. Why? Because if I was in that situation, I don't want to pay extra money. And we're talking about many times the large percentages. Sometimes Ribit could be 5%, 4%. They don't want to do that. Understand? So Yahachi, so Managadula Kining Manaktara Nami. This is 1 second. Managadula Kining Manaktana also is doing the same thing. It says, Gemara in Achanam, you're right. The Chasur Mechser Vaktin, what this will mean to say, Mefis Adam in Banavim Benevet Shulchan. You're allowed to come and do it, whether it's going to be on the table. Aval Managadula Kining Manaktara, no. Right, you're not allowed to. Afilu Managadula Kining, even if it's going to be big portions and small portions. My Tama, what's the reasoning? That Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, like Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, in Banavim Beneveto, as we said, it's only with your family members, yes, but other people, no. What's the reasoning? Like Rav Yehuda Shmuel, that he says, Managdula Keneg Manaktana, it's going to be even during the weekday, it's going to be Asur. My Tama Mishum Kuvia, but then it's like you're doing, you're like doing casino, which means that they don't want you to get accustomed to playing, whether it's gambling or things like that, because it's very addictive. There are certain people that they're very addicted to these types of gambling or things like that. Now, it might start off as a joke that, okay, let's get a bigger piece and smaller piece of a portion, but then it continues. And all of a sudden it goes to whether it's stock market, whether it's, real gambling, and then they lose a lot of money and they regret it and it hurts. You understand? It makes a very big impact. Fine. Next. Matilin Chalashim ala Kodshim Yom Tov. You're allowed to do Goralot on Kodshim on Yom Tov. Right? To find out who gets on Kodshim and on the different types of portions. Maya Valolam, what does it mean the portions? Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Bered Bat Yaakov, says Rabbi Yaakov, the son of Bat Yaakov, okay? It says here that his father was not a proper person, so they never mentioned the father's name, it was only the mother's name. Okay, so what happened? So some people say that was the name of the grandfather, whatever it is. So it says, what happened? Avalo ala manot shel chol b'yom tov, but not the manot of chol during Yom Tov. So it says the Gemara Pshita, obviously. Ma'udatem, I would have thought to say, since it's written ve'amecha kimri ve'kohen, the pasuk is talking about the arguments of the Kohen, so afilu manot chol nami. Mashmalan comes teach you that you're allowed to. Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Bered Bat Yaakov, kol shechavero ne'enash al yedo, en machnisin oto b'chito shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. This is a very famous Gemara. If somebody is punished because of you, you are also punished by Hashem. They don't bring you into the mechitza of Kadosh Baruch Hu. And now, how do we know this? It's going to become written, who's going to convince Achav? That he went and he knocked down Ramo Gilad. Each one is saying which one. It said, I'm going to do it. It's written over there. My ruach, Navot Israeli, that Achav killed them in order to take his vineyard. The Amar Rav says, he told him, get away from me. Right? Why? Because he was the one that caused them that. Meaning, since he was the cause of the entire problem, That's why he was punished. So he says, no, maybe there was written, because he spoke falsehood. And that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, since you're speaking false, people that lie, out of here. I don't want liars. There's certain people that they get accustomed to lying. They don't even realize what they're doing all the time. All the time, they're just lying. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, away from me. Why? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is emet. So he hates sheker. He cannot stand it. So now this guy comes, and he's always speaking about falsehoods. Right? He's always speaking sheker. So he said, get out of here. I don't want you in my mechitza. So it says, there's another pasuk. It says, Savata kalomi kavod. Shete gamata ve'arel, Savata kalomi kavod is Nebuchadnezzar Rasha. Right? Shete gamata ve'arel, it's Tzidkiyahu. Which means that you see from here that even Tzidkiyahu drank the kos tarela with Nebuchadnezzar. So it says that you see from here that Tzidkiyahu would stick on Shoshan Nebuchadnezzar, right? Because he was punished through him. So therefore you see that he was pushed away. So it says the Gemara, that's not true. Chala number one, the Kula Kabel Nebuchadnezzar. The entire pasuk is talking about Nebuchadnezzar and not to do with Tzidkiyahu. And we order furthermore, Tzidkiyahu tzaddik. Tzidkiyahu was a tzaddik. What should he have done? How does he stop, right, Nebuchadnezzar from having relations with him? Nebuchadnezzar had relations with Tzidkiyahu. How does he stop that? So he says, when he wanted to do that, what happened? He says, what was he going to do? But rather, it's another place. That is a whole story over there. The Gemara speaks about it. So he says, there's another place. It says in a pasuk, what does it mean? Punishment to a tzaddik is also not good. En lo tov el ra. When it says en lo tov, it means it's bad. What does that mean? So it says as follows. It says, which means that you see from here that the onish, which is bad, right, is going to cause that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not want him to be there. Okay? My mashmadai chalashim. How do you know the chalashim nishna depurahu? It means chulshim, which is like goral, which is basically talking about lotteries. Dichtiv ech nafalta mishamayim. How did you fall from down from on top? Eli ben shachar nigdata laaretz. Yeah, he says cholesh al goyim. Amar Rehuna lemet shayamatil pura godore malchut. Edaz ben yumo shemishkav zachor. He wanted to have relations. He was coming out of the closet, right? Immorality. So what was he doing? He was doing lotteries. Whose turn is it that he's going to take the head of that nation and have relations with him? Which means you see from here that it was like this was what they were doing, Mishkav Zachar. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan says of Yochanan, it was never schok, right, in the mouth of anyone. There wasn't anything like this. You were never even allowed to stand in this place. Because it was always like the shadim were always there. Right? So basically, it was terrible. Imagine this guy. All he was doing was immorality like this. And this is like the head of Nebuchadnezzar. We're talking about the king. You understand? Says when he wanted to do it, his orla, his foreskin went out. Was trying to go with Shemar Savata Kolomi Kavod Share Gamata Arel. Arel is in what you have 300. The Shashi Arado told Shala Ginam when he went down to Ginam, Rashu Kol Yurde Ginam, everything Ginam started making noise. Amrud they said Shavim Shola Lehem Uba. Maybe he wanted to come to control them. Right? So or lechalot, or to become sick, Kemotam Uba. Shemar Gamata Chuleta Kamon Lem Shanda. So he says, Yatzab Kov Amra Minam, it's from me. Redavish Kavah Etarelim, go bring him down to Ginam, that he should be with all the Reshaim there. So basically, HaKadosh Baruch Hu put him with all the Reshaim in Ginam. So, Ech Shavat Noges, Shavta Midava, Rabbi Yudamarav, Shavta Umazu Shamra, this nation stopped, which they said, that we're going to go into the Mishnah, Kufnun Amud Aleph. It says, Medod Ve'aveh, measure money and bring it to us. Yikadam Nishamra Me'od Me'od Aveh, Below Midah. Just continue bringing money to us. Okay? And the last thing to do with Nebuchadnezzar, Uvu Yatiru Saftali. What does that mean? we're talking about like a big gedula, big greatness. Amar Rav Yudah Amar Yirmiyah Bar Abba says Yudah Amar Yirmiyah Lamed Shirachav Alari Zachar. He used to ride on a male lion. The kasher tanin berosho. He used to tie a big tanin, a nachash, right, a snake, right, on his head, right. But he used to actually, mamash, imagine, you had a king that he was riding a lion, and not a male lion, and his snake on his head was like, that was his like, to show that he was in charge of even the animals of the animal kingdom. That's just to show you the different concepts, okay? And Mizrat Hashem, we continue tomorrow.